Hello everyone, this is our video for Friday, April 17th. I just wanted to do some examples for estimating one mean using raw data. We did type in one example with raw data, but it was just 10 data points last day, and the other ones we used summarized data. I wanted to use some bigger data sets. So my first example is using exam data from Calc 1, MAT 211 that I have. This is from one of my classes, maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. So I just sort of have their raw exam scores from each of the midterms. So we have exam scores from each of 4 midterm exams. Now, eventually, I would like to compare their scores from one midterm to the next, but that's not how we're going to use this data this time. This time, we're just going to basically look at a single exam out of the 4 and do like a confidence interval for the mean. So the first thing I want to do is I want to load the data file up into Minitab. So next to the link for this video, we should have seen links for 2 data files. One that's exam data for this first example, and one that's some computer data I got from a faculty member in the computer science department. Let me flip over to SeaMonkey where I'm setting up my web page. So down here at the bottom, you can see there's a link to example 1, exam data, and then the other comma separated valued file is going to be example 2, computer data. So you want to download both of those so that you can upload them into Minitab. So let's flip over to Minitab and upload the exam data file. So we'll do open, and I'm just gonna look around and find my exam data. So 375, we're on 417. Here's my exam data file. So we'll hit OK. And first row to import 1. I do have column names on this one. The column titles are exam 1, exam 2, exam 3. So we actually do want that checked. So that way it'll know that where it says exam 1, exam 2, and exam 3, exam 4, that those are not part of the actual data. They're just headers. And Minitab recognizes that this is a comma delimited file and everything else should be okay. So I'm just going to hit OK and assume it works. All right, so we do have to go through and make sure that this data is okay. And since I made this myself, I don't think any of it should be entered wrong. But I should point out that there's, so notice in the 8th row here, there's a bunch of, they look like little stars. And then in row 13, there's zeros. That student, like, this student actually did not take exam 2, 3, and 4, and whoops. And actually all the zeros, like I don't think I've ever had anyone get a 0 on exam. So the times when there's zeros, those people actually didn't take the exam. People always get a little bit of partial credit. So if we leave those zeros in there, Minitab is going to treat them as zeros and count them in the average. And I don't want to count in the average someone who didn't even try, didn't even show up. So I'm going to highlight every one of the zeros I see and just delete. And so that makes that cell, instead of a 0, it makes it a blank, which is a very real difference. Zeros would be counted in the average as one of the data points, and the blank means that there's no data there at all. Okay, so that is the only little bit of fixing that I need to do. And notice that Minitab put these column headers sort of separate, and the first row of data is now labeled with a 1. So because it knew that those column labels were there. It kind of separated it off and did not include it as part of the data. So what I would like to do is do a 95% confidence interval for exam 1 here. And once we have our data into this table, it's pretty easy. So basically today we're just practicing loading data into the table, and then we're going to pretty much do what we did last day. So stat, basic statistics, one sample T. Remember, we're using the T version. And I do have one or more samples in column, so we want C1, and now that we have a label, it actually says exam 1, that's convenient. And I want to do a 95% confidence interval, and why don't we produce a histogram here? And we'll see a graph of how our students did. Okay, so let's see what we got. So here's my graph down here. You can see this X bar here is our mean, and this little spread, that's actually the confidence interval. So our confidence interval is that, this was only 56 students, so theoretically I could have given this to hundreds or thousands of calculus students, and the mean for the students I have data for was just under 43. But if I gave it to more students, that would shift a bit, and so we're 95% confident that the mean for all calculus students on this exam would be somewhere between 41.078 and 44.743. And that's what this little bar is. So the middle of the bar is the mean for our sample, and then sort of this range is where we think the population mean might be. So there were a lot of students who got like this is out of 50. So this is 48 out of 50. That's pretty high. And then, so this is actually, I think it says it bin 4650. So there are 21 people who got between 46 and 50. That probably means it's the 47s, 48s, and 49s. I think it has to be strictly between. I'm not sure where the equals are placed by Minitab. We'd probably have to count to see. And then, so there was a bunch at the top, but then it did tail off, and there were a number of low scores too. All right, so that's it. We got our data in, we ran our confidence interval. Seems pretty solid. Okay, so I think that's enough for one video. We'll do a couple short videos today.